the riverbank into community reserve. So this means that we're giving value to the site. So now the community can come, they can use it to jog in the morning, to do exercise. You can have private business come and have little stalls and make it quite a cute little park. So that for one thing, it's valuable to people now, so they're not going to build their houses. And because other people are using it, you're going to know right away if people are returning and why, and you can take measures against that. Okay? And another one that we wanted to look at outside of this is the problem of the landslides. And we know the nearby hillsides are quite bare, and we thought that we would link the two together. And while, for example, if it's a male technical skill that we're training them on, the women can come and plant trees in the hillsides, and that can become either we pay them to do it or we develop a kind of agroforestry so that they are benefiting from it, and we're solving two problems there about keeping them busy and making their lives richer, and at the same time improving the environment and minimizing the risk of landslides for them in the future.
Okay, good. So we've got a combination of soft skills, and also with, it's quite complex. So you've really thought this through in a couple of minutes. So there's looking at, you've got both economics, environment, soft skills, as well as a bus line, which I think that's pretty good. So there's looking at the complexity of the issue and then addressing that from various aspects. I think that's really interesting. Okay, the last group, just really briefly, just the main points.
Thank you very much. I would simply say it has already been covered there.
Okay.
But what we'd like to say is, our proposal, we're saying, why are these people, the photos you showed us, 1 year there were no people, the other year the whole place was taken up.
Yeah.
And so we're saying that it looks like where they're coming from, they are inadequate livelihood opportunities.
Yeah.
So then, so in the design that we have here, is really to try and take care of that aspect. The dam has already been talked about. A small neat dam to take care of the floods, and also from that dam they could do fishing. They could use the water for growing, for doing agricultural activities around, and that same water now can be put into the water reticulation arrangement. Now there's the issue of up there, the catchment area.
Yeah.
So that needs to be restored. It means that strengthen the capacity of this community forest management system. But overnight, we cannot stop them from going up to harvesting. All we need to do now is to put in measures so that the harvesting of trees is done in a more sustainable manner. And then we would want to introduce these energy saving stoves, so that if in a week they were going up 5 times, probably through use of these energy saving stoves, that would sort of reduce in the short run. So there's also a possibility that well, in the long run, we're even thinking of the energy aspect. Is there a possibility of setting up this small hydroelectric electricity arrangement, so that electricity can be drawn from there, and then the community now will be using that energy. But of course, we say the dam comes with a risk, which has already been covered up there. So basically, what we are saying here is also the issue of housing. We would want to improve help them with the planning. Well, these houses are not planned, but if they are planned, then we can even put drainage there to reduce the drainage, so that the water can flow out. We thought of encouraging some to go back, but we were saying that we could run into problems with the politicians, so since these are people who vote for those. So for us here, what is priority, we are saying, is drinking water and energy for this community. So yeah, in summary, this is what I have. But I know Hillary has something to say. In 1 minute, Hillary.
Okay, well, good. Actually, this is really interesting. Now, most of you are environmental related. I don't see anything here on early warning. If you were a disaster risk community, I wouldn't have seen any of this. There would have been maybe an early warning system. There would have been an evacuation plan, maybe forced removal of these people from the river. That's interesting. I don't see any of the more disaster kind of traditional disaster type measures, but they could be included actually as well for some areas that we can't. Okay. You've
For that
spoken.
reason, that is long-term plan of government.
Okay.
No, but I think
We've
all
moved our people,
groups-
we don't need to warn them, they're gone.
Well, there's some areas though, well, the river in the middle though, it's highly densely populated. To move all those people is almost impossible.
But you
I'm
were-
doing devil's
sorry.
advocate here.
So you were saying there were about 200 families living in the river.
On each side.
That is doable, and I think all groups have been put high priority
Yeah.
on that urgent problem
Yeah.
to relocate those people first in different ways. And
Yeah.
in addition, some groups are proposing to construct them.
So the main solution was to move these people away. Okay, but these people don't want to move, which often happens. People don't want to
No, we
move.
propose
In Mexico, they're not-
make them, building them and make a community around them.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times people don't want to move because they don't think that there's something better out there. But if you speak to them and you come up with a solution that they agree with is better than what they have at the moment, then it's fine. It's when you forcibly move them without providing them with any options, without consulting them at all, that you get this really strong community uprising. Whereas if you involve them in the process from day one, chances are, I mean, unless it is actually that fantastic to be on the riverbank, chances are you'll be able to move them.
It's also, if you are very, very cynical, you need to do awareness, always.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the real awareness comes with the flood.
Yeah, it's true. Often it takes a disaster for a window of
Yeah.
opportunity to open up and for people to realize that this is a problem. Unless they really get hit. Right now they get hit every year, but they can rebuild quickly. So unless you really get hit, there's often nothing's going to change. So unfortunately, disasters do provide a kind of window of opportunity for change. This was kind of a quick run through of your presentations. I really appreciate your ideas, and I'm actually going to be working with this municipality, so I'll bring these ideas to them actually.
We'll send you
So even
our
if you
feed.
took this as being a silly little exercise, but in reality, some of these ideas might actually, I don't have $2 million, unfortunately, that I can bring to them, but maybe we can find some donors. So I thank you for that exercise, and I hope you found that it was useful and interesting. There's a combination of ecosystem components, human resource investment, and some structural, which is complexity of our world, right? It's combining those. I'd like to turn over to Jonathan. We're going to kind of continue on now with the how. We're in the how section this afternoon in terms of tools and communicating risk and how to do that. And we can shut the door behind you so that we get a little more comfortable here.
Hello everyone. Is that on? Can you hear it?
Is it not working? Can you see if you can?
This one here?
It was working before. Can't help you on that one.
지금 제 마이크 어디 마이크 좀 보여요? Something else exists.
Maybe I can just try and talk really, really loudly. Will that work?
Yeah.
Because otherwise we might waste a lot of time while we're waiting for the technician to come. So, my name is Jonathan Schott. You can call me Joe. I work for a small NGO in Thailand called Sustainable Development Foundation. So we're only altogether about 19 staff. and only 2 of us are foreign. Everybody else is Thai in the organization. I think I was chatting to Karen over the coffee break. I think a lot of the things in my presentation, maybe you've already heard from other people today, and it's quite late in the day, so I'm probably going to go quite quickly. And maybe you can treat my presentation as kind of a summary or a recap of some of the things you've heard today, because some of the issues will be quite similar, I think. So let me just tell you a little bit more about my organization first. We were founded in 1996 and formally registered in 2000. And the main things we work on are anything that involve both communities and the environment. So if it's only the environment, then we don't do that. And if it's only communities, then we don't do that. It's where the 2 things come together. And to start with, we didn't do disaster risk reduction or climate change adaptation. We only worked on the environment, on natural resource management. And what happened was in 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami occurred. And we were working with small-scale fisherfolk in the south of Thailand, and we had to help them with disaster recovery. And that's when we became involved in disaster risk reduction. So we've been working in disaster risk reduction for 8 years now. At that time, we were the secretariat for something called Save Andaman Network, which was a network of NGOs and government agencies working to do disaster rehabilitation and risk reduction in altogether 121 communities. And after that, we took some of the lessons we'd learned and we applied them in other parts of Thailand. So in mountain areas, in forests and agricultural areas as well. And eventually the work we were doing on disaster risk reduction, it changed over into climate change adaptation as well. And just to let you know, at the moment we're implementing 2 big projects that are related to climate change adaptation. One of them is working in conjunction with UNDP, and the other one is working in conjunction with IUCN. And you can see some of our other partners. And as well as working for SDF, I'm a member of something called the Thai Working Group for Climate Justice. So we look at social justice issues related to climate change. And I'm also the national coordinator in Thailand for something called GNDR, the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction. So what I'm going to talk about very, very briefly, because like I say, it's a lot of similar things that you've already heard today. It's something called CREATE. Basically, a lot of SDF's work is right at the lowest level. We work with the communities who are affected by disasters and affected by climate change. And like we've been hearing from many people today, there's lots of things you need to consider. You need to consider the environment, you need to consider infrastructure, you need to consider community rights. But we have to work on all of these really complicated issues with communities, with farmers and fisherfolk. So we had to find an easy way to do that, and that's what CREATE is. So it's climate resilience evaluation for adaptation through empowerment. So it's a way to look at vulnerability and resilience at the local level, at the community level, in a very easy way. And there are 4 parts altogether. The first part is a framework, a way of thinking about resilience and vulnerability. The second part is an overall process of steps you need to do. And then we have some tools and methods and a reporting format. And what I'm going to do today, because we only have a short time, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the conceptual framework, which I think you'll see is similar to what you've discussed in the morning sessions. And then we'll have a little look at the overall process. The tools and methods and the reporting format we won't go into, and I'll show you some examples. So basically, what we're looking at is 2 things, vulnerability and capacity. And what we say is that both of them have an internal part and an external part. The internal part is what we can manage, and the external part is the change that's coming from outside. And this is where it will start to relate to things you've already seen today. So when we talk to stakeholders at the local level about their internal sensitivity, why are they sensitive, why are they vulnerable to risk, we ask them to look at 3 things. So what type of livelihood they have, how they manage natural resources, and what land use and infrastructure is like. So these are 3 things that within the community maybe you can manage to some extent to reduce your risk. When it comes to exposure, we're asking where are the threats coming from outside. And we ask them to look at two things. One is climate, and one is human factors, non-climate factors. And so just very quickly, if we look at the internal things, we can break down some details basically. So for ways of life and livelihood, you can see the range of things we're considering, not just what work or what livelihood they have, but what their income is like, whether they're in debt. So for example, we often find that the people worst affected by disasters are the poorest or the most indebted people. What social group they belong to. So for example, people living in slum areas of cities are often more badly affected than people living in wealthy housing estates. Then we have all of the things related to natural resource and ecosystem management, which I think you've seen a lot of. How healthy are the habitats and ecosystems? Are all of the ecosystem services functioning? Is there degradation and change? How well managed are the natural resources? And then the final area is to do with things like, do people have good quality housing? So in the exercise just now, somebody was talking about improving the quality of housing. We have things like rights and tenure. So Gonzalo mentioned that one really important area is community rights. If somebody doesn't have right to the land they're living on, they're probably not going to invest in making their housing better and more resilient to disaster because they have no right to live there. So you'll see those kinds of issues, whether they have access to water and electricity. So basically it's like a model for thinking about, for giving you ideas of all the different areas that you need to think about. We think these three things are the three main building blocks of internal sensitivity. And then when it comes to things from outside, we're thinking about climate factors because a lot of natural disasters come about as a result of climate. So just now, James said that water management is like disaster management because 90% of disasters are related to water, which is in essence is rain, how much rainfall there is. But we just use these very simple terms to talk to communities about where risk and vulnerability is coming from outside in terms of outside factors. But there are all sorts of things that aren't natural that impact on communities as well. So for example, policy and law. We're working with one community in the east of Thailand that lives in a mangrove forest. According to Thai law, completely illegal. You're not allowed to have a house there. You're not allowed to make use of non-timber forest products. You're not allowed to fish. So they have a lot of pressures coming from outside in terms of policy and law. Or another example might be local development. We're working with another community in eastern Thailand. Last year, the government wanted to build a nuclear power plant there. And they're small-scale fisherfolk. And they said, if you build a nuclear power station on the coast, we won't be able to fish anymore. We will lose our livelihoods. And you can do something very similar for capacity. So when it comes to capacity, the climate factors and the non-climate factors, we try and look at them in a positive light. Sometimes climate change might have a positive effect on people, not just a negative effect. And then for the internal things, we look at capabilities, resources, and mechanisms. So just very quickly, capabilities is, do you have enough knowledge and understanding? Do you have the skills and capacities you need? Resources is there somebody there to do the job? Do you have community leaders or do you have volunteer groups assigned to this? And do you have the money or other resources, equipment that you might need? And then we have mechanisms, which is things like policies, plans, and whether you have collaboration and networking. And one other thing that we try and emphasize is we're looking not just at disaster risk reduction, but climate change adaptation. So a lot of disaster risk reduction in the past is focused on these first three steps of stabilize, rehabilitate, and protect. So stabilize, we mean you have a community that's just been exposed to a disaster. They're in a very critical situation, so you try and make things more stable. Rehabilitate, you try and give them assistance so that they can get back to the state they were in originally. And then protect, you try and protect them from risk in the future. Try and stop the same disaster happening again. If we're thinking about climate change and we know that climate's going to change, then we have to go further. We have to improve security, improve food security, livelihood security and income. And we have to look at development. And we have to look at adaptation, we have to look at changing livelihood options and changing management regimes. And this is what we call the adaptation journey. So basically the first step is to try and reduce sensitivity inside. If you know you have something that's making you vulnerable or sensitive to changes outside, you try and change that practice to make yourself less sensible. Then you try and deal with exposure. Where are the threats coming from outside? And you try and deal with those both now, the existing threats, and the ones you think are going to happen in the future. And then if you can get both of those parts done, then the final step is to increase flexibility and diversity, because in the future we don't know what exactly is going to happen. So the more flexibility we have, the more choices we have, the more chance we have of surviving shock events like disasters or climate change impacts. Very quickly, just before I show you a couple of examples, let's have a look. We also give an overall process of, if you want to work with a community on disaster risk reduction or climate change, what should you be doing? The very first couple of steps are related to capacity building. So what we find when we work with communities a lot of the time is they don't understand what climate change is. So we have to explain to them what exactly it is and what adaptation means.